Okay. So let's move forward. So what are the different data types? Because data types is the most important thing, correct? Because data types are the deciding factors that what value a column can basically hold. Am I right or wrong? So what are the different types of data types we have in MySQL? Okay. So when you look at the numeric data types, MySQL support two types of numeric data types. One of it is an int and other is called as an big int. So a normally sized whole number without any decimal values ranging from this number to this number. That means any number between these both can be an integer. Okay, any number between -2, 2, 1, 4, 7, 4, 8, 3, 6, 4, 8 until 2, 1, 4, 7, 4, 8, 3, 6, 4, 7, any number in between this range can be considered to be an int. And how many bytes it takes? Because ultimately what we look at is when you store anything on a computer requires a memory. And how much memory this require is important, correct? It's going to take how many bytes? 4 bytes of memory. That means if you take a column which is of a type int and if you try to store a value into it, it takes how many bytes? 4 bytes of memory. And any number that is not fitting into this range will get into the big int range. That means if you, whenever you are creating a table and when you feel that a particular column can have a number that could range in between this number to this number, you have to say that number, you have to define that column with the data type big int. And how many bytes of memory it requires to store one value? 8 bytes of memory. Very, very important. Okay. So you should not unnecessarily choose wrong data types because that will impact your memory consumption. Let's say I know my any number for say that falls in between this range and this range, but still I had given or still I created a table with a column of a big int, which is not correct. Am I right or wrong? It's a wastage of memory, correct? Unnecessarily every value that you are trying to store will take 8 bytes of memory because you said my column is going to be a big int. Every value that you try to store under that column will take 8 bytes of memory. So usage of memory is very, very important. This is what we discussed in our previous sessions as well. Am I right or wrong? We talked about UTF-8, UTF-16, UTF-32. Why were these evolved? And what is the difference between UTF-8, 32 and 8? Am I right or wrong? So we had seen it's been evident that the usage of memory got reduced or the consumption of the memory got reduced when using UTF-8 format. We looked in our computer architecture classes. Am I right or wrong? So usage of memory plays a very, very important role. So you have to choose a right data type for right column. Unnecessarily you should not overlook at the things. That means if you require int, if you had given a big int, that's called overlooked. Correct? Unnecessarily choosing the right data type plays a very, very important role. And who will do this? That's the question. Correct? So there will be a separate team called data modeling team. There will be a separate team called data modeling team in your company, and their responsibility is to basically give you the definitions of a table. When I say a definition, what is the name of the table? It has to be created under which database and how many columns that table should consist of and what are their respective data types. So data modeling team's responsibility is to model your tables. Are you all following what I am saying? Guys, is it clear to everyone? So defining a right data type is always important. You should never overlook at it. That means if you require integer, if you given a big int, you are going to waste lots of memory. Am I right or wrong? So that's the reason why there is a dedicated team called data modeling team. So in these days, the developers are acting like modelers also. But when you go to traditional days, there is a separate team called modeling team, whose responsibility is to understand the business logic, and based on that, they have to keep the table definitions. Are you all following what I am saying? So you should never overlook at it. So it's always important to choose the right data type. So each column in a database table has been assigned with a specific data type to enforce the data integrity and optimize storage. Data integrity is nothing but I defined as an int, but I am trying to store string into it. My databases will not allow, like an Excel application. So Excel applications has a data integrity problem. Even though I say a column to be a number, I could still able to store the strings into it, correct? That's a data integrity issue. That means you said I want this column to be numbers, but still your application is allowing you to enter strings into it. So that's a data integrity problem. But how do you overcome that is, if you switch to a database from an Excel application, databases will never allow you to do that. If you define a column to be an integer, at any point in time the user has to enter only integer values into it. It will never allow you to integer other types of values into it. It could be sequence of any characters, any symbol per se. Any ASCII character, any Unicode per se is considered to be an string. It could be anything, correct? It could be 1, 2, 3 ABC. It could be A1, B1, C1. It could be anything per se. We'll talk about varchar, don't worry about it. It's same, it's the same. In the context of databases, we call that as a varchar, and still there is something called text. We'll talk about it. Okay?